one of the group of people who was there, they built an application, turned it pink, and it was for women. Gender is not pink.
Yeah, of course.
Like, just don't turn the application pink or have a woman's sketch there and it is for.
Hi, Kalika. Welcome to the conversation, to the podcast. So, my very first question to you would be in India, when we look at linguistic diversity, it is not merely the number of languages. It also has to do with accents, dialects, and the way people speak, and so much about the cultural contexts and nuances. So, how do you think we can build AI or technology that respects those nuances?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question because, of course, the amount of diversity we have in all kinds of ways, as far as language is concerned in India, complicates things a little, but it also means that if we kind of, make some progress solving this for India, we can actually replicate that anywhere in the world, right? But then there is this other aspect of text and speech, right? So if you think about it, in text, a lot of text flattens things a little, right? By looking at the text, you can't tell whether this person speaks a certain dialect or what kind of social class or caste he belongs to or she belongs to, whether they're talking formally, informally, so all those things are missed in text. So text is relatively easy if there is a written script associated with that language. But then there are so many languages and dialects for which there is no written script, right? It's all just in the spoken form. And also, historically, if we look at it, we are an oral society, right? Knowledge traditionally was passed on orally from one generation to the next, right? So spoken language is much, it's important everywhere in the world, right? But in India, it becomes even more important because that's the primary way in which we kind of communicate or pass on knowledge or access information, etc. Right?
Just sorry. Is it still the primary way that we communicate in today's time?
Absolutely. Please, if we go to the dialects or we go to the smaller languages, spoken form is much more important. We still have many, many, many languages which do not have scripts, right? But they're very much alive because they're spoken by a vibrant community, right? So if we want to kind of be more and more inclusive in the technology that we produce, we also have to step back and think that, what is the cost for a language to be missing from a technology or a technological output? One, of course, there is no language. So, we think language means of communication, but, it is a little bit, not a little bit, a lot more than just language being used for communication.
Right.
You need language to access information. You need language to access knowledge.
Yes.
You need language to just make these things work, make technology work. Right? So it's not just for communication purposes only. Correct. Right? So when a language is completely missing from there, none of these things are possible. Right? So that is one huge socioeconomic deficit that we create for our populations. The second thing that may happen is that language is not missing, but it works so badly, right? That it is actually of no use to its speakers.
It works badly, you would mean?
In the sense that the accuracy of the system or, the responses from technology, the technology's ability to understand that particular language or output in that language is amazingly poor. So it's almost as good as useless, right?
Okay.
And the third thing is that, yes, grammatically you're getting everything correct, but you're missing the entire socio-cultural context. And this is not, people kind of think, oh, cultural alignment is something to do with a nice to have, right? Kind of a thing. But that's not true. Just think, if you're missing all the socio-cultural practices, norms, etc. of a particular language community, you actually may end up harming them.
Yes.
Right? You might not be aware that this is absolutely inappropriate, this is wrong. And that's on one hand that you're going to harm them. The second thing is that people will not trust you. If you're constantly kind of, violating their socio-cultural practices and norms, they will be like, okay, why will I use this?
Yeah.
And then we have to be very cognizant of what it is that the language community really wants. And when we say language community, we also have to be aware of the fact nobody talks of a Hindi language community. Right?
Okay, so on that note, if I would like to understand from you, because out of your work with some of the languages that you've tried to preserve, I think one of it is Gondi, then there's Idu Mishmi, if I'm getting it correct. So from working with this perspective to preserve these languages while making inclusive technology, are there any things, any insights, any experiences that you would like to share with us?
So, having worked in the past with the three main languages that we worked on were Gondi, Mundari, and Idumishimi. And having worked on those languages, the first thing I learned, and my entire team learned, was listen to the people. The second thing is that we weren't preserving languages. We were actually making technology so that people can access information. So, and then the third thing that we really understood was that the needs of the language community are amazingly different. So, for example, Gondi, which was the largest language community here, to the extent that they actually have dialects, that people are not aware that Gondi actually has very prominent dialects, different from each other. Gondi's thing was that they have been subsumed in under bigger languages. So Hindi, of course, Telugu, Uriya, they've kind of become the dominant language in the areas where Gondi is spoken. Sure. They did not have access to information, and a lot of these areas also have other complicated political issues as well. So they don't have access to information, government schemes, ability to teach their children in their own languages. So the problem there was different, right? People wanted access more, or ability to create content in their own languages, right? So that, that was very different. Mundari also was different in the sense that Mundari actually has, if I can use the word has suffered from dominance from other languages even more than Gondi, right?
Okay.
So there the next generation speaking the language is an issue. Now, Idumishimi was an eye-opener, okay? So Idumishimi was different in the sense that so it's a very tiny language, spoken by only about 11,000 people.
Sorry, could you tell us a little bit more about where is this language?
In Arunachal. It's one of the tribal languages spoken in a small area of Arunachal. And there are only about 11,000 speakers of Idumishimi. So there, the situation was extremely different. Because, unlike this preconceived notion we have that, language community or these low resource language communities have to be necessarily socioeconomically poor. That's not the case there. People are pretty well off. So my intern who went to work there discovered that people have iPhones. Okay, people can read, understand, speak in English absolutely fluently. Most of them are educated in English. Right? I think the funniest thing was that she went there and people were having discussions on Gabriel Garcia Marquez's 100 years of solitude. I will, challenge you to find how many people in this building actually know what 100 years of solitude
Yeah.
is, right?
Yeah, right.
So it's a very different thing. Now, why they approached us and what they wanted help with was not any fancy like speech technology or some translation system, etc. Because they can use their phones, they can access any information they want in English. For them, it was about their own identity, right? They wanted help with something as simple as an Idomishimi electronic dictionary because they wanted to teach
Right.
their children. In Arunachal, a lot of people actually speak Hindi as a lingua franca throughout the state, right? So they said, in today's world, if we are not, our language and our culture is not part of the digital world, we disappear, we are invisible, right? So it's very important for us to be part of that.
Right.
Right. So, which was like a completely different thing. We were just completely led. I will say that no language technologist, no one who's working on, NLP or language tech or speech, etc., believes that creating an electronic dictionary for a language is research or it's anything deep or, rewarding. Right? This is a solved problem. Anyone can do it. It isn't a solved problem and anyone can't do it. And this is what the community wants.
Correct.
Not what your research agenda or, your desire to publish, etc. Dictates. And we went ahead and did that with them, working with them. And we learned so much in the process, about things that are taboo in that language, things that people will not talk about. They have a kind of religious practices or sociocultural practices of their own, in which, for example, they won't call a tiger. A tiger is called Big Brother.
Okay.
So from the context, you have to understand that they're talking about a tiger.
Correct. Yeah. I think that sense of conscious decision making is very important at the beginning of be it research or deployment. And,
Absolutely.
Right.
Anything to do with technology, you need to listen to the people you're building the technology for. If you're building it only for yourself, yeah, sure. But if you really want to scale and like have it be
Right.
used, then
Right.
definitely you have to.
Yes, correct. Okay. So you also talk about gender aware AI or technology. Could you help us understand what you mean by that?
Absolutely. So, people use gender neutral. And I actually dislike that because gender neutral, if you look at it, what it really means is that you do not consider gender at all. You create everything without taking gender into picture. And it's supposed to work the same for all
Across
genders.
genders.
Yeah. When we say gender aware, we are aware that certain things work differently for certain genders. Women will use technology differently. Women will speak differently. Transgender community will use language differently. They have different access issues. Right? I kind of think that this is like the difference between equality and equity. It's a similar kind of difference. So if you just say, oh, my thing is gender neutral, what you're essentially doing is you're, being blind, absolutely blind to the issues that are there.
Right. So in your field of work, how much of gender awareness do you come across and how much of the gender neutrality?
Most people like to do gender neutrality. Like that is like a favorite thing for most technologies because it's easy, right? You say it's going to work for both genders.
But then it wouldn't work, right?
It wouldn't work.
It would fail
Yeah.
in the real world.
Yeah. But, there are enough people of both the gender for them to declare victory, who will be able to use technology at a similar level. It's where they fail that is interesting, right? For example, in some of the work that we've done in the past, and this is, I think anyone who's worked in India in the field is aware of this. Access to technology is a big distinguisher between men and women. Right?
Yes.
Women still have a more gated access to technology.
Right.
Right. The other thing is that women need to seek permissions in ways that men don't, right? Like, for example, when we were doing some study on data work, women being able to do data work, our assumption was that, okay, this is great for women because women are able to do it at home in the time that they want. They don't have to go anywhere, right? But even for that, we discovered that women have to take permission. For men, the only consideration was, is this trustworthy? Will you pay me? Right?
Okay.
Will I get payment? Am I doing this? This is not a scam, and will I get payment? Right?
Straightforward.
Straightforward. For women, it was, will my family allow?
Will I
Will
have
the
time?
society allow?
Yeah.
Will my husband have something to say about this? Will my in-laws have to say something about
children.
this? Right? Like my
Yeah.
children. And then it was the assumption that women can do it from anywhere and at any time, at their convenience, is a myth. Okay? Most of the data that the women worked on, most of the submissions were between midnight and 3 a.m. because that's the only time they found from their household work and every other responsibility to be able to do that. We interviewed women. Women were doing this from their roof, shutting themselves into their bathrooms, or bedrooms, because there is no space. Right? Like there is no this like neutral kind of a space that women can work from at their convenience. Right? And even like in the cases where the in-laws or the husbands or whatever fathers, etc., were supportive of them doing the work, the assumption was that the sara kaam khatam karo, like do all your work. जब family or घर की responsibility हो जाए, then if you have time, then you do it. And that happened at midnight.
Interesting.
Right? So now if you're not aware, and the trust thing, like trusting a system or trusting a technology is such a huge deal for women because trust deficits affect them so much more. So, मेरा नाम नहीं बदनाम होना चाहिए. No one should be able to point a finger at me.
Right.
Because I'm doing this work.
Right.
Right? And there were cases that were reported of where husbands broke their wives' phones because they thought that they were spending too much time doing this. Right? So if you're not aware of it, you don't bill for it, right?
Correct. Right.
And women in general will not look at like, oh, Microsoft or Google and this big thing, or therefore it is trustworthy. They will trust their friend, their neighbor, another senior credible woman telling them, ki no, this is fine. I've done this. It works.
बिल्कुल.
है ना? So the way trust works is also so different.
Yeah.
And if you like do gender neutral kind of a view, like if you have a gender neutral kind of a view on this whole thing, then clearly they won't be able to use your technology.
Correct. No, that was very, very interesting. Thanks for unpacking it for us. Nice. So now I think you've been doing research in inclusive technology for close to 2 decades now. In your experience, how has the AI research landscape in India evolved or changed? And what are some of the changes that you feel should be incorporated without further delay?
Yeah. So, I've been working in research almost all my life and in Indian languages for, around 24, 25 years. We wouldn't be having this conversation 20 years ago. Nobody really wanted to know about any Indian language thing.
When did you start seeing that shift?
I think about maybe just 10 years ago.
Okay.
10 years ago, things really shifted.
Was there a moment or an
Trans-
event that
I
didn't?
think the minute these transformers came into being, and I think there was a lot of support from the government suddenly.
Right.
The companies also kind of like commercial entities also like sat up and because earlier the narrative in most of the commercial entities was that anyone who can use our technology can use English. So why would
Correct,
we
correct.
invest in, it's a lot of investment in other
Yeah.
languages. That changed. A lot of these things happened almost simultaneously. Mobile,
Right.
wave in India. We just leapfrog, right? We just had no this desktop to laptop to mobile kind of a thing. Everybody suddenly had mobile. And I'll give you a very interesting thing. Sometime in 2011-12, sometime around that time, we were doing fieldwork for agricultural search, crop search, etc., using voice and graphics. So we had a pilot, and we were doing fieldwork testing out that, and we were using the smartphones available then to do this, because obviously for voice and for graphics we had to use smartphones, right? Now, when we were doing this, and we did the fieldwork in some remote place in Madhya Pradesh, right? Like a really small village in Madhya Pradesh. What was the only criticism we got? No one, your target population will never have smartphones. They're just too expensive for them to use. Now, go anywhere. Everyone has a smartphone. There's such deep penetration. So I think that
Right.
whole thing really changed. So that is one change that I've seen. And earlier researchers thought a lot less, like you solve this particular problem, right? You go deep, solve this problem, and it's done.
Right.
Right? Now, researchers themselves are thinking of like, if I solve this problem, what is necessary to take it to scale?
Yes.
So that I think is the positive thing.
Yeah.
But I think the negative side is that we are rushing too much. So maybe like at some point you want to stand still for a little. I'm not saying stand still for a long time and let the world overtake you. But every now and then it is good to stand still and take stock of what you're doing.
So how do you balance that in your own research practices?
Yeah, so the way to balance that is like, I firmly believe that you have to go out on the field and understand things. But then, like, when we talked about earlier about the problem of plenty in India, the problem is so vast, right? That you do have to do some kind of a deeper thinking. So my thing is that think of prototypes. Do prototyping fast, get things out fast, but continue thinking deeply about the problem that you're trying to solve.
And yeah, I think, and in the Indian context, this has to be the way we perceive research, and then further on look at prototyping
Yeah.
and deployment.
Yeah. And I think in the Indian context, we're very aware of that. So, I never have a problem explaining the whole language issue or these kind of things to an Indian audience or to an Indian person, because we intuitively get, most of us speak at least 2 languages.
Yeah.
On an average 3 to 4.
Yeah.
We understand how languages differ.
Yes.
We understand how we use these languages differently
Yeah.
in different contexts. It's very difficult to explain this to like a monolingual English speaker,
Yes.
right? But here people just intuitively get it. They
Yeah.
know that this is a problem, or this is an opportunity, and this is how we use it.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's easier to make a case for this in India, for India,
Yeah.
by India, but outside, it still is a struggle to explain this whole multilingual AI phenomena.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, then you're in the right place, doing the right things, I suppose.
I hope so. Like I always said, I've said this so many times before, that I truly believe that my job is over when language is not even a consideration. You're not having
Yeah.
this conversation with me ever,
Yeah.
right? Like, you're not asking me, how do we solve this? How,
Yeah.
it's not even part of the equation.
Yeah. So where do you
Then-
think we are? in-
I think we've made a lot of progress in the prominent languages, and we're very far. And I think there are a lot of positives. So, like, if we think of some of the work that's being done, say, under the Indian government's thing, right? Like Bhashini, for
Yes.
example, right? I think the major advantage or the major positive I see of Bhashini is that for the first time, somebody thought of language technology as an infrastructure. And not as a collection of commercial or a collection of some engines in some languages and in some some applications,
Yeah.
right? Like a random rag bag of things.
Okay. Any concluding thoughts?
Yeah, maybe I can go back to a gender thing and not the language thing, because I think language thing now people really do understand. Gender aware technology is still something people grapple with. We pay lip service.
What would that mean?
That would mean that we say, oh, this is for women. So I have recounted this incident earlier also, but I would say this again, that I was part of an event where people were asked to build prototypes for women farmers, right? And one of the group of people who was there, they built an application, turned it pink, and it was for women farmers, right? Like, so that kind of gender washing, you have to rise
Yes.
above
Definitely.
that. So I think it's really important that people realize that gender is not pink.
Yeah, of course.
Like,
yeah.
just don't turn the application pink or have a woman's sketch there and it is for women. Actually think how women use
Yeah.
this differently.
Yeah.
The second thing about the gender thing is representation is not inclusion.
Yeah.
You can be represented but still not included.
Yes.
So if you're truly building a gender aware thing, representation is a necessary step. Of course, you can't do anything if you don't have representation. So if you don't have data that's representative and you don't have representation, but you have to think beyond that. Is that representation then actually, bubbling up to real differences?
So you start there at representation and then you further expand it.
So I would I would love to see people, thinking about these things in a more nuanced and deeper way.
Sure. Thank you.
You're
Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap on season 1 of AI Nama. This conversation once again reinforced that creating inclusive tech should center around the aspirations and requirements of communities. You can find AI Nama on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and YouTube. Do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. We'll be back with a lot more exciting episodes in the next season. Until then, I'm Nishtha Gorke, signing off.